Hi, I'm Kathy Lindsay. Welcome to Meet the Candidates. This Cable 10 program allows you, the viewer, to hear directly from our candidates. We have gathered up questions from the community, and now we get to hear the candidates' views on issues that are important to our community. This is all leading up to the primary election, which is on May 17th. Today, we are lucky to have Eric Whisman here, and he is the candidate for Magistrate of the 6th District. So welcome to you, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. Appreciate taking the time.
Of course.
You've run for office before and served in office before, but some people may be new to the community or
Sure.
new to your face on fiscal court. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you have chosen to run for fiscal court?
Sure. I'm Eric Whisman. I most recently served as Frankfort City Commissioner. I was born and raised in this community, and specifically in Bald Knob, Bald Knob Elementary, where I'm running for the 6th District, which is the precincts of Bald Knob, Bridgeport, Bell Point, Hickory Hills, downtown courthouse, and that kind of thing. For all of my life, really, I've been called to give back to this community, and I felt very fortunate growing up in specifically in Bald Knob that even though we weren't wealthy, I had a lot of great teachers, a lot of great mentors, a lot of great people that gave back to me and allowed me to go to college and be the first in my family and become one of our elected leaders and to really give back to this community. And I've always felt a calling for that. And so years ago I decided to, after living in Lexington for about a decade, to come back to Frankfort and to jump in head first and try to do whatever I can to make the community better in any way. And I very much enjoy doing this kind of thing and being a leader and helping the people that need the help. So I decided to run for magistrate this time. When I initially thought about running for local office, I was very torn about city, county, and I decided at the time to run for the city, and I had that opportunity to do that now. And for a number of reasons, I think county, a magisterial seat is a better fit and will allow for less of the infighting that is all too common with the city commission, where we can focus on a singular district and the county as a whole, but representing a direct part of the community that I can really work to affect change. So that's why I'm running again.
Okay, so kind of in correlation with your role as a city commissioner, what do you see your role as being a magistrate on fiscal court?
Mm-hmm. The city commission is very defined by a boundary, and there's a lot of local opinions about even stepping out of that, and that stops a lot of progress. I really feel there are so many opportunities to partner with surrounding counties and surrounding communities and have regional draws that I was never able to get traction on the city commission. Of course, part of that's a year of my term being a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic. But I felt we were really stopped and stifled in what we could accomplish and what we could dream for. And I approached a number of things about, we really need to take a regional approach to recycling and trash, swimming pool and exercising and sporting facilities. As the capital city, we are a draw, and we already partner with some things like the local housing corporations that Frankfort sort of serves multiple communities around us, and that's a great example of how we can do more if we try and we remove those artificial boundaries that I feel are too stringent in the city. So I'm excited for the county to be able to really focus on bigger ideas that will really take us forward. So.
Okay. Well, I know you have experience from the city commission, but if on the fiscal court, you're going to have organizations, people coming to you who need money.
Yeah.
They have projects.
Yeah.
They want, to improve the Humane Society, or they want to, the needs for the homeless. The schools have needs. Broadband expansion is one that we have.
I'm excited about all those.
How would you address those requests and then find the balance Well, let's just say, what would your priorities be as
Yeah.
far as investments in the community?
Yeah, it's time to make a lot of investments. One of the things I'm excited about, while I was on the city commission, I knocked out some of the big projects. I'm very proud that, things that have been languishing for my entire lifetime. I'll be 40 this year. My entire lifetime, new animal shelter's been talked about, and I led the charge to make that happen. The reservoir for our community, our water reservoir, our main piece of our water system, was literally crumbling. Was able to navigate and make that happen. So I'm excited to tackle some of those big issues with the county as well. Broadband expansion or whatever, there's new technology that's not just broadband, is the number one issue right now that I'm hearing from everyone. We've seen it as a lifeline this time, and I really feel if we wait to make the improvements, 5 years from now, we're going to be behind, and people are going to start choosing where they live. Remote work is going to be a growing trend. I'm seeing it already. I had a friend call me last night saying I just got a remote job that is a new startup company. That's going to be a trend, and we're going to see people choosing the communities they want to live because of that accessibility. And I know my district that I'm running for, the out in the far edges of the county, have no options. They've been without for the last 2 years, and the whole of the pandemic they were shut off except for cell phones that might work if you drive up to the road a little ways. And that's just not acceptable in this day and age. We have state programs like Kentucky Wired that are putting broadband and fiber optics all throughout eastern Kentucky, and you get 5 miles outside the city and you have no options. That just shouldn't happen.
Right.
So that's a primary objective. And then we've got to tackle some major issues. Some infrastructure projects around this community are big, of course. In my district, in the 6th specifically, there's been some roadway projects and bridges that have been talked about for 30, 40, 50 years that have never been done. We've got to tackle those. I want to focus on the housing needs of our community. We have a really economically depressed, I hate to say it that way, but we have a population that don't have a lot of options sometimes, and we're seeing a trend in all the tourism efforts that are kind of taking up some of the housing options for our people, and they're being pushed out of the community, and we shouldn't have that happen just because you can't afford a higher priced apartment. We need to look at some housing options, and that's a really big issue. I was proud to serve on the Housing Authority board in the mayor's stead for 2 years, and I'm very familiar with what I think we need to do in those instances too. So there's a multitude, a
long
tasks,
list,
yeah.
which also means a lot of money
Yes.
that we don't have.
Yeah.
So how are we going to do that?
We could have so
Okay.
much more money.
Okay.
Tell
us about it.
The county has been, in my opinion, very, very poor about using federal and state resources available to us. There's a lot of talk about Lakeview Park, and there's a master plan that I will take credit that I helped initiate with the city's master plan. We have options for public-private partnerships that are now available all across the state that Frankfort's not used at all yet. Those could address a lot of our needs, and we could pay for them in a multitude of ways. We have never, to my knowledge, received some of the park grants that we're eligible for, that everyone around us uses, but Franklin County never has. There are a multitude of funds coming out of the economic recovery package that we've got to be ready to spend, and the fiscal court so far is making, I think, some good choices in some ways, but we need to expand upon that greatly. They did commit some of the funds to broadband expansion, which was critical, as we've said. But we've got to look at all those resources and pull them back in. All those tax dollars are going out of our community, but they've never flowed back in my opinion, really at all. And Frankfort's this odd economic beast when the rest of the country's doing really well and the state's doing really well, the state government seems to pull back, and when in bad times, they really put the money forward. And Frankfort always seems to benefit at the off time.
Right.
So it's our time, and I
Right.
feel like we can really navigate a
like
better future right now.
Need to make some smart moves
Yes.
and being more efficient, and with the funds that we have,
Yeah.
which leads me to my next question.
And good planning. We just need good
Yeah.
planning, and we should have had a lot of things in place that we could use those funds when they come up and are available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when we talk about being more efficient, and it's a question that comes up every time, is it time to revisit the possibility of a merged form of government in
Yeah.
order to save money
Yeah.
and to pool our resources and to make all of these things happen?
I'll tell you, I think our community's voted that down multiple times. And I honestly particularly having served on both sides of the table, hopefully in the near future, I don't see any benefit of directly merging our government at the moment. I actually see maybe that the city's resources would be fleeced more for some of the county efforts, and that just can't happen, and that some of our more rural parts of our community might be overlooked if things were merged. That doesn't mean that we can't create some synergy through some of our services. I personally believe that our parks departments need to be intertwined, at best something.
That's my next question.
Because they are, and why I pushed for a master park plan, and I'm very proud that we've accomplished, and the county's doing one so that those can be merged and that we can have, shared services and shared expenses. There are things like that, planning and zoning potentially, that we already have a shared board. Some of the staff and some of these, we don't operate in silos anymore. We are not so separate that this rural-urban divide that used to divide the city and county is sort of obsolete at this point. Yeah. I think we need to be smart about how we share some of those resources and stop trying to protect our own house, if you will, that has been really the mode of operation, I feel like, for too long.
Okay. We're going to talk about parks for a minute.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Like you said, the Lakeview does have a park plan that is going before the fiscal court. Their committee has sent it there, and so have you had a chance to check it out?
Absolutely.
How do you feel about it? Do you support it?
Yeah, I'm happy that we have something developing. Like I said, one of my main goals when I ran for city commission was to develop a park plan, and for the first time in our entire history, we have a comprehensive park plan. And I asked the county to come in and join us. I wanted it to be a joint effort. Unfortunately, they didn't do that, and I think it's short-sighted that we don't have more of a shared vision. But there is a lot of overlap potential there, and I hope in the future we'll look at expanding to look at the entire county for park planning. We have some natural areas like I'll say Red Bridge and Schweitzer Bridge, some of the access to the creeks, Benson and Elkhorn, that are just natural opportunities for park spaces, for access, for enjoying this landscape that we have that no one else has. And we didn't get that. Right. The park plan as it is for Lakeview, I think, is a good step. I am disappointed that it doesn't include the swimming pool. I think that park specifically needs to look at the accessibility to the high school and the shared services. More than a third of the city's population and almost a whole third of the county's population lives within walking distance of that park. It needs to be, I think, tailored to the type of clientele that are going to use it, which are going to be a lot of students. And I'll say, I should have brought this up at the park meeting, but I can't swim to this day because I grew up in Bald Knob, 10 miles from town. We didn't have great transportation, didn't have the money to get to town very often. But there was never an accessible opportunity. There was not a pool in this community that I ever got to go to as a kid and learn how to swim. And I hope to honestly fix that this year. Yeah. But I'm going to be going to Shelby County and using the pool there like everyone else in the community right north of Georgetown. And I think that's short-sighted. I know that there's some discussion looking at other sites and potentially what we can do as a collaboration to build something, but I think it's a better opportunity to maybe look at where some of the other components of Lakeview's plan could go to other locations and put something else there. And really, when we started the park plan, my goal was to look at where we could consolidate some of the existing park elements so that we could put more of the sporting things at Lakeview. Because right now, if you have a child in this community that plays baseball that's in elementary, middle, and high school, for instance, you as a parent have to go to 3 different locations in this town. You can't watch one game. You're splitting your time. You're traveling. I think that was a problem, and I was hoping that we would look at how we could consolidate some of those services and take some of that running and all that effort out of this. And if we looked at the parks as a whole, countywide, that would have done that.
Yeah. Well, the plan as it is not cheap.
No.
They're estimating about $60 million. And if they move forward with that, that's somehow going to have to be paid for.
Yeah.
So what is your preference on how that gets paid for?
To be quite honest, I don't think it's possible with the current funding situation. You know, this is a rare year that the fiscal court has a $3 million surplus. It's usually in the whole $3 million. How do we pay for anything if we have that kind of negative balance? And I don't think the legislature is going to give us any new taxing opportunities. And do we want new taxing opportunities in our community on restaurants and otherwise that some people are claiming to be, an opportunity. What I think we need to do is, and I've already started the conversations, is talk to the attorneys who are in Lexington who administer the state's P3 partnership program, who the main attorney grew up here in Frankfort. It's a friend of mine. We have an opportunity to put something like this out to bid on a long-term lease situation where we can pay a little at a time. It can go ahead and be built, and we don't have to nickel and dime and figure out how we're going to pay for it and put the, kick the can down the road 10 more years. I really think that's probably our only option at this point without going in the hole, bonding a project that we can't afford and paying for it piecemeal. And we all know when we do those things, when we push the project over a longer period of time, we don't get the results, and most of the project doesn't get built.
Yeah.
I think we've got to be very strategic about how we do that, and we've got to involve all of our partners. The school districts are obviously going to have to help. It would be great to have our local university, which has its own funding issues at the moment, but if we could share some more of those services, we've got to take a more regional, comprehensive approach to this. I think the fiscal court alone cannot build this, as much as I would love for them to write the check right now and get it done.
Yeah.
But we've got to be smart about how we do it.
Okay. I do a lot of these interviews over the years. We've done it together before.
Yeah.
Most candidates talk about the need for growth in our community. Do you consider yourself a pro-growth candidate?
Yeah. Smart growth, right?
Well, I'll get to that too.
Absolutely. But I don't want growth just for the sake of growth. And everyone knows, if you don't know, I'm very much a historian, and I think all of us are best served by learning from our history. Frankfort has always been slower to grow, but thankfully the unique thing about our community is that we usually don't lose population. A lot of rural Kentucky right now is losing population drastically to the urban centers. Youth are deciding to move, and we have that too, but we are very much a purposeful community where people choose to live here. We have that story over and over and over again, and we don't lose a lot of population growth. We might not have grown as fast as some of the surrounding communities, but we don't have the problems that some of those communities do either, which I think gives us a great opportunity actually to plan our growth a lot better. I think with good fiber optics, internet connectivity, we can be a regional hub for people wanting to live in a small town feel with great amenities, that you can still be in a rural community. My precinct, the 6th that I'm running for, has got so many young people that are moving out and buying acreage in the last couple of years, that 5-10 acres, building houses, that kind of thing, that I welcome. It's the trend that we need, but they're choosing to live here. I think we don't realize that people just don't come. We've always had the problem that we've got Lexington and Louisville that are a short drive away, and for the amenities that are there, if you have young children or otherwise, or even elderly services or something, why wouldn't you choose those unless we have the reasons that you want to be here? And a lot of that, I think, is we need to do a better job at retaining our youth. I'm one of a very few of my graduating class that came back and decided to stay here and purposely reinvest and be part of the community. A lot of people leave, a lot of our youth leave, and we've got to figure out how to engage those people more and make their experience growing up here better, make them want to stay, and engage a lot of the people that work for state government and otherwise about, we've got great services, great quality of life, we have great schools, we have low cost of living. We can better some of the opportunities to make us a growth community for sure.
Yeah. Some people may have different definitions of this, but how do you define economic development?
That is a loaded term at best, and it gets used for almost everything. And I think we have to be strategic about what our economic growth looks like. We have some natural elements that are already driving our economic growth. It's state government, although they aren't the employers that used to be, or that they used to be. It's bourbon, for sure. It's the tourism industry. I mean, Buffalo Trace having 350,000 visitors is nothing to sneeze at, and we need to do better at that. But we need to be targeted in what we want, and I think we have an opportunity in our community to do that. And I've worked on the City Commission on this, and I've been working for years about how do we target, I think, small business startups, young entrepreneurs, those people that want to get into running a business, because you can run a business here. There's a great example, the Woolery, and serve the entire world from one location because you have internet access. You don't have to have, that front of foot traffic in the door. But I think we have a real opportunity to become a tech hub, and that is not to say tech businesses as much as an entrepreneurial town. I'm very proud. I worked with Kentucky State University. I'm so glad that we have the Small Business Center there, the Small Business Initiative. About 7 or 8 years ago, Kentucky led the nation we had 3 towns that were on the top 10 list of small business incubators, small business, startups in the entire nation. They were Bowling Green, Elizabethtown, I think it was, Paducah. I may have one of those wrong, but they all had universities with small business centers in their village or in their community that worked directly with their local governments to help people start businesses.
Sure.
With what we have with our natural landscape, our tourism industry circulating around Bourbon and government jobs, it's ripe for people to start fantastic businesses here, and I'm very proud to have helped start the Innovation Center here in Frankfort too. That is maybe the birthplace of some of those types of businesses in the near future. So I think that's how we define economic growth, is by the strides we can make and the startups and things we can create.
Well, as far as what your role would be in the fiscal court, and I know you're a planner, which is great, but we've heard about the comprehensive plan, master plan, strategic planning, all the planning is happening, and it's very important, and I'm not going to take that away from anything, but at some point there has to be action.
Absolutely.
So if on the fiscal court, what actions are you going to take immediately that just need to be addressed?
Unfortunately, our community has not done a lot of planning. The comprehensive plan is the most important document that we can possibly create this year. It's federally mandated for anyone that doesn't know what it is, and please, anyone out there, get involved, and it says what we want to see, and it drives the local government. The elected officials are legally held to enforcing that comprehensive plan, which is the vision of our community. Everything and every decision they make should be related to that. I think it's a great example that we have had some plans for some facilities and some things built in this community, and when I was on the city commission, I was able to say, animal shelter, you've got a fantastic plan. It's a little costly. Can we trim that? Let's fund it. Let's move on it. When we have good plans, we can act because we know all of the parameters. We know the costs.
Specifically, what are some things the fiscal court can do to actions they can take to create more jobs that have family sustaining wages? Because a lot of people think that is going to be the key to have more people here, obviously, if we have jobs that will support them here.
And there's a discussion that we could have about, having more people doesn't necessarily beget more revenue. There's a lot of, 1 in 3 of our children in this community live in poverty. So more population doesn't necessarily mean more jobs and things. But
family sustaining wages.
Yes.
Okay.
Good livable, good quality of life.
Life wages. We
need to take some strategic investments to create the entities that are going to be tasked with creating these opportunities. We have sort of an outdated model that through KCDC, for example, that's been of issue of late, that their only role, really, the only task that they have is protecting industrial development lands. I mean, that's all they were created for, not economic development. We need some targeted economic development entities that I want to create that looks at how do we create a tech center? How do we expand tourism? How do we create more jobs, quality of life? Because we all know state government isn't going to do that. They're not growing jobs right now. They've been cutting for 2 decades. We've got to fill up the gaps. And I think part of that is making some investments in some important infrastructure, which is, I'm going to come back to it time and time again. The most important thing we need to do in this community right now is build internet connectivity and modern internet connectivity. I worked with the plant board here when I was on city commission and said that's my #1 agenda, and it can't be the copper system that we bought 30 years ago and we're still paying for, and we still have to pay for another 20 years. Thankfully, the board has made the decision to start running fiber optic throughout the community. AT&T and some others are, but we've got to. I look at it like post-World War II in the rural areas where all the grant funds were made to run electricity to homes that never had it before. It's exactly where we are right now with internet connectivity, and that's going to open up the doors for opportunities for people to buy homes, rural part of the community, start businesses at home, sell things on the internet. That's how we compete.
Okay. You mentioned KCDC. If on the fiscal court, is that something you would continue to fund?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
It is, I think, an outdated model. Like I said, their initial focus and the only focus that they have unilateral support or directive from the city and the county, it's a shared entity, is for industrial development, land protection. We have 4 industrial development parks, and probably a third of them are empty, even though some other people will tell you otherwise. They're underdeveloped and undervalued. I think we have to have either a shared initiative, and I'm not opposed to a city and a county initiative that can manipulate much easier to the needs of their respective entities to grow those kinds of organizations.
Well, that brings me to really quick, I want to talk about Buffalo Trace before we go any further. For those who don't know, they're proposing an expansion into the Peaks Mill area. Is that something you support?
You know, I'm very much the preservationist, not just of historic buildings, but of important landscapes and our natural ways here. Our river and our creeks are very important. I think we need to have some serious conversations with Buffalo Trace. I support them, and they are a great economic driver in this community and part of our history. But I think we can, if we had good planning, which the comprehensive plan is going to inform, and it's going to tell them where we want to build bourbon amenities. That's exactly, if anyone is out there listening, that's exactly what the comprehensive plan is supposed to do. It's supposed to show where we want to drive industry as a community, and that's not for the elected officials to say, that's for the whole community to say, and particularly the elected officials are generally sort of kept out of that until the community, through our Planning and Zoning Commission, makes those recommendations of the final product. So that's going to be the most important opportunity this year.
The Planning and Zoning can make that recommendation, but do you think the fiscal court needs to be held accountable for that decision?
Absolutely. I think far too often, we had another instance very recently that's come back up again, that the fiscal court thankfully made the right decision, but by only one vote, to protect a very important piece of land. We only have so much agricultural land in this community. Buffalo Trace and others are thinking about long-term growth and where they grow trees for oak and that kind of thing. We've got to take that into account.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm being long on your questions.
No, that's okay. And then my last question before I turn it over to you, because it's still on this subject, is as far as growth, development, some people say it boils down to development versus preservation. So
I hear that often. And, my job is a historic preservationist for the state, and they are one. I say the opposite. They're one and the same. Buffalo Trace and our distilling industry shows it exactly. The historic buildings and the landscapes and the history that are embodied in those places are what's driving the future right now. And no one comes to our community, for a big box store or a restaurant on the interstate exchange. They come to see the things that give us a sense of place that are unique about our community, and most generally those are the historic places that give us that sense of community, that sense of place, and make us identify with our home other than the people. So I say they're one and the same, and so commonly right now across the nation, people are buying old buildings and using the history to inform the business that they start inside, and it becomes a local treasure, just like the E.H. Taylor House downtown that's on its way to becoming a new boutique hotel and restaurant that are going to draw people in and contribute to our quality of life and jobs. There's a microcosm right there that's going to show you how preservation and economic development are the same thing.
Okay. Yeah. Well, now is your time in the spotlight here.
Okay.
Address our voters and tell them why they need to vote for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm Eric Whisman again. I grew up in Bald Knob and in this community, and I've dedicated my life to giving back to this town. And I want to make an effectual change, and I want to be the leadership for the change that we need in this community. I have a couple of opponents that have spent 50 years in local government, and I think it's time for new eyes and a new perspective on things. And I've proven my ability to be able to accomplish some things in this community and to knock out some of the big projects, and I intend to keep doing it. So I hope you will consider voting for me. The May primary for our precinct is the most important because it will be decided by the May primary, whoever wins that vote, because we don't have a challenger. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that the voting precincts have changed this year. For my precinct, on voting on election day, you'll only be able to vote at Westridge Ridge Elementary School and at the fire department in Bald Knob. So those will be your two locations. So make sure you know that before you make a plan to vote. And please get out and vote, because those changes are likely going to confuse some people this year. So I hope everyone will plan ahead, and please vote Eric Whisman on May 17th.
Okay, well, we appreciate you coming here and your time.
Absolutely.
I know our voters.
Thank you all again for doing this.
Absolutely, we love it. Are you kidding me? So, again, I want to remind our viewers that they need to get informed and go vote on Election Day, which is May 17th, and then tune into Cable 10 for live election results. It's election season, so that means, again, it's time to get informed and then voice your choice. And we'll see you next time.